The rain felt sharp on my skin as I walked out of the office that evening. My scarf was falling apart, and my fingers hurt from typing all day. I couldn't remember the last time I had a proper lunch, and my back felt stiff and sore. All I wanted was to get home, take off my shoes, and forget that I still had 2 supplier audits due before the week ended. But that wasn't how my life worked. I didn't go home to relax. I went home to keep going. I didn't even notice my legs carrying me to the bus stop. By now, it was just habit. My mind was somewhere else, thinking about unpaid bills, insurance, school fees that were late, and the medicine Edward had run out of 3 days ago. I kept forgetting to pick it up. I kept forgetting a lot of things. When I got home, the apartment was quiet. Not peaceful or cozy, just empty. The kind of quiet that made you feel like no one would care if you came home or not. Edward was in his usual spot, the recliner in the corner, facing the TV with the sound turned low. "Hey," I said as I took off my coat, trying not to get the floor wet. "Hey," he said back without looking at me. Same tone, same words, same evening. Every evening. I walked into the kitchen and filled the kettle. The sound of the water was the loudest thing in the apartment. Edward wasn't always like this. He used to be full of energy. He loved being on the road, driving across the country. He used to call me from rest stops to tell me about the sunrise in Arizona or the storm that almost flipped his truck in Dallas Arts. But years of fast food, sitting too long, and ignoring his health had taken a toll. He had constant back pain and a heart scare at just 39. The doctors told him to change jobs. He told them off. When the disability checks finally came through, it was his mother who made it happen. Karen did everything she could. She called in favors and pulled every string. "He can't work anymore," she said firmly, and no one dared argue. "He needs someone to take care of him. And you, Betty, you're his wife. That's your job now. Support him." I worked 70 hours a week. I packed his lunches, paid every bill, picked up all his medicine. I skipped meals so Emily could have enough. When we couldn't buy her a winter coat, I sold my jewelry. I made meals from frozen spinach and hope. Still, Karen called every week to tell me I wasn't doing enough. "He looks thinner," she'd say. "Try cooking something fresh once in a while." A real woman takes pride in her kitchen. I bit my tongue so hard it bled. Edward never stood up for me. Sometimes he agreed with her. Sometimes he just stared at his phone while she picked me apart. I stopped expecting thanks. I stopped expecting anything. For years ago, my boss, Jack Quaid, pulled me aside. He smiled and said, "You're working harder than anyone. You need a break. You've earned it." He handed me a shiny brochure for a wellness retreat. It had steam rooms, massages, herbal therapy, a week in the mountains. I looked at it like it was written in a foreign language. Then I asked, "Can I give this to my husband instead?" Jack looked surprised but nodded. "If it helps him feel better, sure." So I packed Edward's bag. I wrote down all his supplements, printed maps, and called the retreat to make special food requests. When he came back, sunburned and angry, he threw the gift basket in the trash. "Total waste of time," he said. "Just a bunch of fancy candles." Nothing helped, but I still hoped. I told myself maybe next year he'd try. Maybe he'd learn something. Maybe he'd want to feel better. Instead, he stopped asking how work was. He forgot our anniversaries. He didn't notice when Emily brought home a painting. He didn't notice when I got a promotion. He called my job cute. Meanwhile, I kept us going. That night, as the kettle screamed, I stood at the sink, staring at the foggy window. I saw my reflection. I didn't just look tired. I felt tired in my bones and in my heart. I didn't recognize the woman I saw in the window anymore. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Jack. "Are you absolutely sure about your answer? Campere is still open. They want someone exactly like you." I didn't reply. Not yet. I turned off the kettle and walked to the living room. Edward was still in his chair. Emily's sweater was crumpled on the armrest. He hadn't folded it. He probably didn't even notice she left it. I sat on the edge of the couch and whispered to myself, "This can't be it. This can't be how my story ends." For years ago, when Edward had just been diagnosed and Karen still acted like she knew everything, I learned every medicine in the cabinet. I read the warning labels like they were holy texts. I rearranged the kitchen so he wouldn't have to bend down. I stopped buying food that upset his stomach. I cooked like I was on a cooking show with almost no ingredients, no time, and all the pressure in the world. Still, Karen said I wasn't doing enough. "He's lost weight," she'd say, like it was my fault. "A man needs care. He needs real food. What exactly do you do when you get home?" I'd grip the phone tighter. But arguing never helped. Edward never stood up for me. Sometimes he agreed. Sometimes he just stayed quiet, scrolling on his phone or flipping channels like none of it mattered, like I didn't matter. Eventually, I stopped crying over it. Instead, I worked more hours. I stayed late. I bought less food. I picked up 2 extra jobs I could do from home on weekends. I kept telling myself it was only temporary, just until he got better. But he never got better. He didn't even try. That's when Jack started noticing. He didn't say much at first. He just left coffee on my desk when I came in early. He asked if I needed help with the reports. One Sunday, as the office got quiet and everyone else rushed out for happy hour, he leaned over the divider between our desks and said, "You haven't taken time off in 3 years. That's not healthy." I gave him a small smile. "Vacation's not really an option right now," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "It should be. You've earned it." The next week, he slid a brochure across my desk. It was for a spa retreat, quiet cabins in the mountains, steam rooms, yoga, all paid for by the company. "Go take a break," he said. "You give us everything. Let us give something back." I stared at the brochure for a long time. Then I asked, "Can I send my husband instead?" Jack looked surprised but didn't argue. "If you think it would help." So I packed Edward's bag again. I wrote down his medication schedule, printed directions, and emailed the retreat about his food needs. When he came home, he threw the free lotion in the trash and muttered, "What a joke. Those people don't know what real pain is." He didn't say thank you.
He didn't ask how I'd been.
And still, I kept doing it. I sent him every year. While he was gone, I stayed behind. I worked through migraines. I paid bills that were always late. I helped Emily with school projects. I listened to Karen talk to me like I was still a teenager who had no idea what she was doing. One night, I remember it clearly. Edward was asleep in the recliner, mouth slightly open, the chair tilted back just enough that his breathing was loud and rough. Emily was in her room, coloring. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring out at our tiny backyard. The porch light was flickering, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to stay on. Then I turned toward the kitchen. I needed water. Or maybe tea. Or maybe just a moment of silence. What I didn't need was a sink full of dishes. But that's what I found. Cereal bowls, a glass with dried orange juice, a plate with sauce stuck to it. Emily had rushed to school that morning, and Edward, well, he never did the dishes if I was home. I sighed, rolled up my sleeves, and turned on the faucet. The water pressure had been acting up for weeks, but today it blasted out like it had something to prove. It hit the plates hard and splashed water all over the counter. I reached for the sponge just as a few drops hit Edward's phone, lying face up by the sink. It was a new phone. I had bought it for him 3 days ago for his birthday. I'd saved up quietly for months. He hadn't even said thank you. The phone buzzed once, then lit up. A voice message started playing through the speaker. At first, I didn't understand what I was hearing. Then I heard Karen's voice. Sharp, clear, and impossible to miss. "I told you, Edward, I don't like the idea of Barbara moving in while Betty's still there. It's messy. She's going to figure it out."
"Barbara."
I froze. My hands were still wet, the sponge slipping from my fingers. Without even thinking, I reached for the phone and unlocked it. He hadn't changed the code. Same 5 numbers he always used. I opened the messaging app. There were dozens of voice messages between him and his mother, some from weeks ago, some from just days earlier. My hands were shaking as I tapped on the previous message. Edward's voice filled the kitchen. "Mom, Barbara's different. She gets me. She doesn't nag, doesn't guilt trip me. She actually listens. I'm done with Betty's act. I convinced her not to take the Campere offer. She thinks it was her idea. Once she's out of the country, it'll be just me and Barbara. She'll still send money. Guilt works for that. And Emily doesn't need to know anything. I collapsed into the nearest chair. My legs couldn't hold me up. Everything around me blurred, like the world had tilted sideways. I could only hear his voice, cold, proud, like I was nothing but a problem to be handled. I tapped on the next message.
Karen again. She's always thought she was better than us.
But listen to me. If Betty finds out you've been faking this pain and letting Barbara live there, she'll blow it all up. You'll lose your disability claim. You'll lose everything. You think the state won't check. Then Edward replied, Relax, Mom. We're not stupid. Betty's too busy pretending to be some kind of nurse to notice anything. She's not going to Campere, remember? And even if she does, great. She's gone. Barbara stays, and I finally get a normal life. Plus, if she files for divorce from overseas, I could probably get part of the apartment. Maybe even support payments. I'm the disabled one, remember? That last line hit me harder than anything else. Not because it was cruel, but because it was planned. All of it had been planned. Everything I gave, every sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the double shifts, none of it mattered. I was just a tool. A pawn. Too tired to see that I had never even been a queen on their board. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, holding the edge of the stool, my fingertips going numb. My stomach turned like I was going to be sick. But underneath the shock, there was a quiet voice inside me. A steady voice.
Leave. Now.
Before I even realized it, I was on my feet. I walked to the hallway, picked up my phone, and found Jack's name. I pressed call. He answered right away. Betty. I took a breath. I'm going, I said.
Campere.
I'm taking the job. There was a pause, then his calm, steady voice.
Good.
We'll finish everything in the morning. I hung up. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I didn't wash the dishes. I didn't even make the tea I had planned. I just stood in the quiet hallway, listening to the apartment settle around me like a place I no longer belonged to. I wasn't just Betty Quimper, the wife of a sick man anymore. I was someone else now. Someone finally waking up. I didn't pack in anger. I didn't toss things in bags or slam drawers like people do in movies when they've had enough. No, I folded sweaters neatly, page by page in my notebook. I made a checklist. I booked our flights, printed the travel plans, and emailed Emily's new school in Campere. Every move was slow, calm, and careful, because this time I wasn't running away. I was making a choice. When I told Edward, he looked at me from the recliner like I had spoken another language. You're taking the job now. I nodded. Yes. He paused the TV. You said no. You said it didn't feel right. I changed my mind. He gave a cold laugh. One of those dry, mean laughs that always made my skin crawl. That's just great. Go on, leave. Let's see how long you last over there without me doing everything for you. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He didn't know I had already filed the paperwork. 3 days after we arrived in Campere, I sat across from a lawyer named Mary Berry. She was French-American, sharp and calm, the kind of woman who could quiet a room with just one sentence. We'll file for divorce from here, she said. The apartment, custody, everything, will handle it under international law. It's not unusual. I nodded. Do it. Outside her office window, the sun lit up the city. It felt like I was finally breathing again. The apartment Jack's team had found for me and Emily was small, but warm. 1 small bedrooms, a little balcony, and a view of a bakery that opened at 7 a.m. every day, right on time. Emily started school near the embassy, and to my surprise, she got used to everything faster than I did. Within a week, she had friends. She came home with stories, jokes, and said French math was weird but kind of fun. I heard her laugh again. Really laugh. The kind that lights up her face. And I was working. Really working. But not the kind of work that left me feeling empty. I was helping create new skincare ideas, sharing thoughts in meetings, building something with my name on it. For once, I didn't feel invisible. And Jack was there. He never pushed. Never asked too many questions. He just showed up, quietly, kindly. After late meetings, we'd walk home. Sometimes he'd bring pastries or 2 cups of espresso from the cafe on the corner. Sometimes we didn't say anything, and in that silence, I felt more safe than I had in years. One night, we sat on a bench near the river. The Eiffel Tower sparkled in the distance. Emily had just gone to bed after finishing a drawing she titled Mom's New World. I remember the way the wind felt that night, soft, gentle, like it was letting me breathe. Jack looked at me, not with pity, not with fear, but fully present. "You're different here," he said. I gave a small, tired smile. "I think I'm just remembering." Remembering what? That I exist. That was the night I knew I'd never go back. Not even if Edward begged. Not even if Karen showed up with fake tears and a sorry she'd practiced in front of a mirror. They didn't call for weeks. Then came the threats. Emails from Edward. Voicemails from Karen. "You left your husband. You'll regret this. You owe us. You're tearing your family apart." But they didn't know I had already handed everything over to Mary. And Mary didn't miss a beat. "We're ready to show financial records," she wrote in a letter to Edward's lawyer. "If your client plans to use disability as a reason for support, the court will need proof, including recent messages that may say otherwise." It worked perfectly. Suddenly, Edward stopped replying. 4 days later, he signed the divorce papers. But of course, he still wanted his share of the apartment. That's when Mary made her next move. She sent proof that I had paid every mortgage payment, every repair, every tax bill. Edward hadn't paid for anything, not even the electricity. If he wanted half of the sale money, he'd have to pay back half of the debt. And just like that, his share vanished, buried under facts, bills, and responsibilities he never thought would catch up with him. The apartment was sold. I walked away with enough to cover Emily's school fees for the next 4 years. Edward walked away with less than $2,500. And I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt clean, like I had finally washed off years of being used, ignored, and blamed. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to burn everything down. I just needed space. And I had finally given that to myself. After the divorce, I didn't hear much about Edward. The last thing he sent me was a bitter email titled, "Hope you're happy now." It was full of blame, with one line that stuck in my mind longer than it should have. "You destroyed our family." As if there had been a family left to destroy. As if he hadn't been breaking it piece by piece. Every time he lied, every time he let his mother treat me like a maid, every time he did nothing. Still, a part of me wondered where he'd go. I figured he'd run back to Karen. She always said she'd do anything for him. Always called him her good boy, her brave soldier. Like pretending to be sick and wearing me down counted as courage. And I was right. He did go to her.
But from what I heard, it didn't last.
He showed up with a half-zipped duffel bag and a cheap rolling suitcase. She let him in, of course she did. But the Karen who opened the door wasn't the same woman I remembered. She was tired. Too tired to carry his needs anymore. Too tired for the lies she once helped create. At first, she gave him the guest room. But she didn't cook for him. She didn't stock the fridge with his favorite snacks. She didn't even ask how he was sleeping. From what someone later told me, she barely spoke to him at all. After a few weeks, she started locking the fridge at night. "You eat like a teenager," she told him. "You don't work. You don't clean. What am I supposed to do? Go broke feeding a grown man?" That's what Karen said. I thought I'd feel something when I heard it, maybe pity, maybe some kind of satisfaction. But I didn't. I felt nothing. Edward tried to find work, or at least that's what I was told. But after all those years of not working, no one wanted to hire him. His resume had big gaps. No references. No training. He hadn't even kept up with the basics. So he took the only job he could get, hard physical labor. Construction, lifting concrete, carrying steel. Work that made his bad back worse by lunchtime. But now, there were no more doctors to write fake notes, no more lawyers to lie for him, and no wife to hold everything together. It was just him, gravity, and the mess he'd made for himself. Meanwhile, Karen stopped picking up his calls during the day. At night, she'd mute the TV when he came into the room. Eventually, she started telling people, "He's not my problem anymore." From what I've heard, Edward now lives in a tiny back room of her duplex. It used to be a storage space, no windows, just a mattress on the floor and a broken lamp. He's asked a few friends for money. No one replied. People remember. They remember what kind of man he was when life gave him a woman who would have walked through fire for him. And he sat there, warming his hands, while she burned. Back in Quimper, my life became quieter, but fuller. Emily was doing great. She had friends, joined an after-school art class, and even started a little blog about weird things she found in French grocery stores. She didn't ask about her father anymore. One evening, we were sitting on the balcony. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You're happier here, aren't you?" This time I didn't lie. "Yes," I said. "I am." She smiled and nodded, like hearing that gave her permission to be happy too. And Jack, he was still there. Still steady. He never tried to fix me, and maybe that's why I felt safe with him. There was a quiet kindness in him. He never asked for anything. We'd walk through the small streets after dinner, and he'd point out the little things most people missed. A carved stone above a doorway, a garden on a rooftop, the smell of lavender growing from a crack in the sidewalk. He didn't need me to be anyone else. That, more than anything, showed me what love is really supposed to feel like.
Not duty,
Not fear. Not giving until you have nothing left.
but peace.
Comfort.
Trust.
One night, after walking me home from work, Jack stopped at the door of my building. He looked at me, not expecting anything, just hopeful. "When you're ready," he said softly, "I'd like to take you somewhere. Just the two of us. It doesn't have to be far. Just a place that's yours." I didn't answer then. But something about those words stayed with me. They felt warm, like something I didn't even know I needed had finally arrived. For so long, I thought love was about how much pain I could take. But now, I was learning something new. Love doesn't need to hurt. It just needs to be real. It hit me one morning while I was folding Emily's school uniform. Steam was rising from my coffee cup. The quiet in the apartment had changed. When I first got to Quimper, silence scared me. It felt like a heavy space filled with guilt. Now it felt like a deep breath.
A gift.
I hadn't heard Edward's voice in over 3 months. No emails. No voicemails. No threats. Karen had gone quiet too. Last I heard, she told a neighbor. He made his bed. Let him lie in it. I pictured her sitting in that old chair of hers, arms crossed, pretending she didn't help make that bed, pretending she hadn't filled it with lies and control. I thought I might feel proud. Like I finally won. But I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. More than that, I wanted to forget what it felt like to beg for love and call it normal. That night, Jack came by. He brought wine and fresh bread from the market. Emily was at a sleepover, so it was just us. We sat on the balcony. The sky over Quimper was turning soft purple and gray. He didn't say much. He never did when I was deep in thought. That's what I loved about him. He gave silent space. He didn't try to fix it. He trusted it. After a while, I looked at him and asked, "Did you ever think I was weak for staying as long as I did?" He looked at me with gentle, clear eyes. "No," he said. "I think you were tired. And still trying." I nodded slowly. "I think I wanted to be the kind of woman who fixes everything, who never gives up." "You were," he said. "And now you're the kind of woman who saved herself. Both are strong." That night, I cried for the first time in months.
Not from pain,
but because someone finally said what I had never let myself believe. That I wasn't broken. That I had always been enough. Even when the people I loved made me feel like I wasn't. I used to think love meant holding on, no matter how much it hurt. I thought that if I gave more, bent more, stayed quiet more, I would finally be loved back. But the truth is, real love doesn't ask you to disappear. Edward never hit me. He never yelled. He didn't have to. He made me feel small with silence, with little comments that didn't seem like much at the time. He made my pain feel like I was overreacting, my tiredness seem dramatic, and my success feel like luck. He didn't need to break me. He just needed me to believe I wasn't whole in the first place. And I believed that for far too long. But not anymore. The morning after I talked with Jack, I booked a weekend away. Just the two of us. A small cottage near the lavender fields in Montpellier. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for anyone to say it was okay. I looked at Emily and said, "I'm going away for a few days, sweetheart." She smiled, saw Jack nearby, and nodded.
Good, she said.
You laugh more when he's around. I almost cried again. We went. We didn't do anything fancy. We read books on the porch. We made pasta. We walked through fields without talking. One night, I sat in the grass, stared at the stars, and said quietly, "I didn't think this was possible." Jack reached for my hand and whispered, "It always was." And I believed him, not because I needed him to save me, but because I had already saved myself. I was the one who left. I was the one who said enough. I was the one who showed my daughter a mother who didn't cry behind locked doors or panic at every message alert. Now when Emily laughs, it doesn't sound like relief. It sounds like happiness. Now when I look in the mirror, I see someone I'd be proud for her to grow up and be. And when I think of Edward, if I think of him at all, I don't feel anger. I feel distance. Like a bad dream I woke up from. Like a house I moved out of. Like a name I no longer answer to. For years, I thought choosing myself meant I had failed. Now I know choosing myself was the bravest kind of love I've ever shown. Not just for me, but for the little girl I used to be. The one who thought love was supposed to hurt. And for my daughter, the one who now knows what real love should look like. My name is Betty Gilpin, and this time, I'm not going back. Not ever.